guys, so we're here, we're getting organised. I'll show you what's going on. So we've got lots of organisation happening. Rachel's here already, so we're just organising. Cassandra Goldie's here. Andrew Wilkie got rather sunburnt yesterday, so he sends his apologies because it was really sunny here yesterday. Everybody got sunburnt. So we're, as you can see, the media's here. I'll be speaking only like 90 seconds or so, but I'll be doing a speaking event. Yeah, so we're just waiting for more people to turn up, of course, and we're getting organised. Do you want to say anything? I'm on the national page. Hang on. No, you can stand in front of me. Hi, Cassandra. How are you going? This is Cassandra Goldie, for people who don't know, from ACOS.
Great to be here with Catherine. As you know, Catherine is an extraordinary advocate, mostly online, giving the updates about the terrible treatment of people associated with the cashless debit card and the way that Social Security has become so toxic for people generally. It's really an important protest that's happening today. I'm so delighted to be here and see you in person. Catherine, is really and something I hope all of you out there watching online can be a part of this. Lift up your voice today, every day. It's so important that this Parliament,
yes,
which is, we've seen the misogyny of it, we've seen the way that the culture is so toxic inside, we see the way Social Security has become so toxic for people who actually just need help. Today's another day to really make sure that we get that message out and demand the changes that we know are needed. Thanks so much, Catherine.
Yeah, thank you very much, Cassandra. That's great. Rachel, would you like to say some words here? You just have to... Hi, Rachel.
Hi, so good to see you here. I think the press is about to start.
Good, okay. Oh, I better get up there. So we'll come back later with Rachel. Hang on, I've got to...
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here this morning on this whole Canberra day. It's supposed to be 22 degrees.
Hang on a minute, guys.
All the later.
Look at all this.
The cash is we need to speak and we need to let these people at the back here know, Scott Morrison and the LNP, that we need to raise the rate of the job seeker for good, so people can live in dignity, feed their children and keep a roof over their heads. Let's see what they pay. Let's challenge Scott Morrison to go for a month on the unemployment benefit and see how we can feed his family. The cashless debit card doesn't work. It controls people. It doesn't empower people. It's unfair. It's racist. My people have lived this government. My people have been on the debit card now for a couple of years. It does nothing. It ruins lives. It controls people. Aboriginal people they controlled many years ago, in the 50s, 60s. They told us where to live, how to go, be here, be there. Children have been going without Christmas. Let's see if these children can suffer what our children have to suffer, whether you're white or black. We stand here today on the land of the Ngunnawal people. Always was, always will be. Every time a formal welcome to country is given, it continues a tradition that has always been a part of Aboriginal culture. It was always given when permission was granted to visit a different tribal area. When we talk about traditional country, we mean something beyond the dictionary definition for the word Aboriginal Australian. We might mean homeland, we might be tribal or clan area, we might be more than just a place on the map. It is on this land that my people have lived for many years. We're standing on the song line, a Ngunnawal song line, the Bogon Mob, and that feels truth-telling. So this place up here needs to know that. They need to start facing people, Australian people. They need to look after Australian people and families. These children don't need to suffer. Put themselves in their shoes. Didn't they pay for an aeroplane to go around the world to find one of their members a job? How much money did they waste for $4,000 a day? That could feed how many families in Australia? So listen, Scott Morrison and the LNP, we're our voters. And let's remind him about WA. How many seats did they win in WA? 2 seats. So let's make change. Work with the people. Look after your Australian people. Don't let us go in poverty. Don't let them suffer, particularly families. So I'd like to pay my respects to my elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders here today. I'd also, in keeping the general spirit of friendship and reconciliation, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you all here this morning on behalf of my people, the Ngunnawal people, or the land you are meeting on this morning. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Thank you.
I acknowledge elders past and present, and I know that it's my responsibility, as it is all of ours, to work towards justice for First Peoples. To do this, we must dismantle the racist programs that continue colonial violence through our welfare system, and it is everywhere in our welfare system. We do have a lot to get through, so the order of speakers today is going to be myself. We're going to have Georgie from the National Union of Students, Catherine from No Cashless Welfare, we're going to have Senator Rachel Sewitt, Ed Miller from Get Up, and Cass Goldie, the CEO of ACOS. So thank you all for coming. We will all be available for interview afterwards, and there may be some in the crowd who are happy to box as well. So today we are going to discuss potentially triggering subjects such as suicide, self-harm and domestic violence. So warning to any of you who may have strong responses to that. I'm from a single parent family. My mum raised 3 kids, surviving on sexual violence. As an adult, I've had good and bad jobs. I'm one of the lucky few disabled people who has successfully gotten onto the disability support pension. My traumatising experiences in the welfare system, both as a child and an adult, are why I fight to change it and why I'm a member of the Australian Unemployed Workers Union. I thank the hundreds of people who, at great emotional cost to themselves, documented harrowing experiences of dealing with our shameful and unsafe welfare system in last week's Income Support Bill inquiry. We're here because they were ignored and they were silenced.
Shame.
The decision the Parliament makes today and tomorrow and this week is one of life and death. Our welfare system kills people. There is no safety for women in the social safety net. It traps people in unsafe homes and is the worst contributor to women's inequality. Our welfare system kills people because living in poverty means we don't get to lead healthy lives and we can't afford to pay for the health care we need. Disabled people and those with chronic illness are trapped on unemployment payments and can't access appropriate care. People who need support to live are left with no help at all simply because of their visa status, their family situation or their profession. Our welfare system kills people because shame, deep poverty and harmful mutual obligations are traumatising and they drive too many to suicide. The AUW is inundated with desperate pleas for help, stories of suicidal ideation, self-harm, domestic violence and homelessness every time the government announces another cruel change to social security policy. This should not be our job and the government should not be creating the conditions that produce such harm and distress. 2 million people will suffer a brutal cut of up to $180 a day on 1 April, and every single one of them relies on a poverty payment to survive. The job seeker payment will be cut 45% below the poverty line and mutual obligations are going to become even more punishing. The government knows the consequences of their choices because people who live in this system, as well as advocates and researchers, have been telling them for decades and providing evidence for what we say. The Parliament should reject the Income Support Bill and urgently work on overhauling our social security system so that it cares for us all. Prime Minister, put your money where your mouth is on mental health and suicide prevention. End forced labour programs and income management. Stop government-inflicted poverty and make welfare payments above the poverty line of $80 a day. Thank you. So I'm just going to invite Georgie from the National Union of Students up to speak. Come on up, Georgie.
My name is Georgette and I'm a youth allowance recipient. Before COVID, and despite living on subsidised accommodation, I only had $9 left from my allowance to spend on groceries. As you can imagine, I found it really difficult to participate in greater university life, and this affected my ability to meet people and establish a support network. And consequently, my esteem and well-being were severely affected. My heart goes out to those even younger than me, joining the job market during a recession when money to buy food will be even harder to come by. As Women's Officer for the NUS, I'm concerned even more so for the effects of prohibitive welfare on women. Instead of protecting vulnerable people, particularly single mothers, legislation disproportionately limits female participation in the social and economic sphere. The Coalition refuses to help its constituents, even though lifting Australians out of poverty would suit their economic interest, if not their morals. Clearly, this government could only care for their own tax breaks and brimming pockets. Shame.
Okay, it's in there.
Thank you, Georgie. Catherine from the
Here we go.
Homeless Welfare now is going
Thanks.
to come and talk to us about a deeply racist program.
Good morning, everybody. So my name is Catherine Wilkes, and I'm here today as a representative of No Cashless Debit Card Australia to bring the voices of thousands of forced Card trial participants to this place. I'm here to ask this government to exercise its power and show mercy to stop this divisive policy which is seriously harming the most vulnerable members of our communities. The cashless debit card has failed. Government's own evaluation has proved it. It has failed people, has redirected hundreds of millions of dollars in spending away from services and support. It has failed to meet its own objectives and has failed on human and economics rights grounds. The most recent evaluation released by the LNP themselves has shown that 84.5% of people, there was no positive impact from the cashless debit card after 4 and 5 years of trials. That same report also showed that domestic violence, crime, poverty has increased in all trial sites. It showed that people who are managing before rollouts are not managing now. It reported that cards did not help unemployment, had little to no impact on addictions, and has not helped or made the lives of people forced onto the cards any better. For far too many people, life is now worse than it was ever before. Many of those people were already at their lowest ebb. Now they're facing unsurmountable economic and social barriers and struggling to cope with the psychological impact of having control of their daily choices stripped from their hands. Over 80% of people on the cards are experiencing abusive levels of social stigma and suffering, a weight that is cruel to expect them to keep bearing. This policy has driven many people to acts of desperation just to survive it, and has driven some less able to cope to end their lives. In our region, mums and dads are sleeping in tents on the river or on people's backyards. Housing security and mental health has declined across the board. I hear from cardholders across Australia every day the conditions in other trial zones are not much better, and in some places conditions are even worse. The impacts of this policy, which intentionally targets women, the disabled and carers, has been disastrous. This policy is a social harm. It is an abuse being committed by our own government, and it needs to stop now. By government's own definition of the terms, Indu cards are an act of financial and domestic abuse. Today, I hope to speak to as many members as I can, try and compel them to see the urgent need to act in defence of the powerless and prevent the Morrison government continuing that abuse.
Hear,
Thank you
hear.
very much.
Hear, hear.
Thank you, Catherine. We're now going to have Ed Miller from Get Up, Economic Fairness Campaign.
You got it?
400 chairs.
That's yours.
One for every 1,000 people on unemployment payments in this country.
Oh,
People
hang on,
who
hang
don't
on, hang
have
on.
a seat at the table in what is meant
Wait
to
a
be the
second.
people's house. While the government makes
My
decisions that will affect their lives and push them further into poverty. Who are they consulting with? Because if it's
she
not
took it,
unemployed
I think.
people,
Hang
it's
on.
certainly not economists.
Wait a second.
At the moment, there's only 220,000 available jobs for people who are looking for work. There's 1 million unemployed people. There's 1.3 million underemployed people. It's not good enough to those people to say that the best form of welfare is a job. Those jobs do not exist, and you cannot bully them into it. We, as Get Up, represent hundreds of thousands of people across Australia, many of whom are impacted by this issue. And if we had to put out chairs for the people that are impacted by the unemployment system, it wouldn't be 1,400, we'd need many, many more fields. It's mums and dads, brothers and sisters, partners and children. These are the people in whose lives the government holds in its hands when it's making these decisions. We want to thank Senator Siewert and Senator Pratt for being out with us today, to listen to the voices of unemployed people and the experiences that they have of this system. And we want to present to them a petition from Get Up members, 120,000 who signed for a permanent raise to the New Start rate, and another 60,000 odd who have signed for an increase to the job seeker rate. And we'd hand it over to the politicians now.
Well, good morning, and thank you for lending your voices today to this important cause. On behalf of the Labor Party, I want to acknowledge traditional owners and to thank all of the activists that have come out today in support of people surviving on this impoverished rate of now to be increased to only $44 a day. I couldn't survive on that. And we've seen 700,000 people historically surviving on this rate for a long time, for years and years. And now we have an unemployment rate in Australia of over 1.3 million people. We've seen through the period of coronavirus the difference that the supplement has made to lifting people out of poverty. And we need a government that's prepared to lift people out of poverty. Instead, we have in the Morrison government a government that wants to continue to entrench people in this poverty, particularly as we look now to the ending of JobKeeper. And we will see many more Australians subject to these indescribable levels of poverty. We've seen people survive for very long periods of time, or not survive for very long periods of time, on these impoverished rates. And now, and during that time, you lose your mortgage, you lose your house, and now we've got people who might have just scraped by during the period of coronavirus on their JobKeeper payments or with their increased coronavirus supplements, who will now no longer have either, and they will be pushed down to this, disgusting rate that we won't stand in the way of in the Labor Party. We know that we don't have the numbers in the Senate to change the numbers. That is why we need a government that is prepared to do that. Government, like a future Labor Party government, that will keep housing, addressing poverty at the foremost of its mind when addressing these issues. So keep up the fight. We need you to keep raising your voice on these issues every day.
Hi folks, I'd first like to acknowledge the Ngunnawal people, the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting, and pay my respects to elders past and present, and remind people that we are meeting on stolen land. This government has made a choice. They have made a choice to condemn 1.5 million people on the jobs and payment to poverty. Make no mistake, they know exactly what they are doing. And to make matters worse, they are screwing down mutual obligations. So now we have job seeker. That will ensure, that will add weight to employers, to harass, to bully, to intimidate people to take a low-paid job so that they're not dogged in. Not only that, they are now going to be checking people's job applications to see if they're actually really genuine. When there's 9 people for every job, people know that they are not going to get the jobs that are there because the jobs, or they're not going to get a job because the jobs aren't there. And yet the government is continuing its attempt to demonise, to stigmatise those that are looking for work, going back to their old ways. They know $40 a day or $44 a day is below the poverty line, and they know you can't live on it. That's why they doubled the coronavirus
Challenge them to
supplement.
take it on $40 a day.
You cannot survive on $44 a day. Now the Greens know that, so we've got a series of amendments to this bill when it comes into the Senate tomorrow. $80 a day, folks. That's what we know. The government knows that that's what people need to live on. We want to abolish mutual obligations. We want to make sure that the liquid assets test is not applied. And we want to make sure that the income threshold, which has been decreased from what the government increased it to, goes back to that rate of $300. Those are the amendments that we'll be moving, and we'll be calling on the parties in the Senate to support our amendments.
And well they should.
My name is Cassandra Goldie. I'm Chief Executive Officer of the Australian Council of Social Service, and I firstly want to acknowledge the Ngunnawal people and thank you, Auntie Violet, for your very warm welcome to this place which is stolen land. And I want to acknowledge that tragically, in just the last week, 3 First Nations people lost their lives in custody again. I want to also acknowledge that this week on Thursday is Close the Gap Day. And we know that the Close the Gap agreement has been very clear that what is about to happen up here on the hill, which is the slashing of the adequacy of the lifeline unemployment payment for people, is in direct contravention of the Close the Gap agenda. Shame. The gross inadequacy and brutality of our social security system, which is being unleashed on people across the country every single day, is a shameful human rights abuse. For far too long, successive governments have played politics with the lives of people who do not have an adequate income. They have unleashed this attack on people on low incomes. The robo-debt disaster was a deliberate human rights abuse. It irreparably ruined lives, and tragically lives were lost. This is an unfinished injustice, and we continue to call for those responsible for robo-debt to be held to account. I want to be very clear that the social security system is a tool that prosecutes racism and sexism in our country. The shameful CDP, which targets and directly discriminates against Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, is a shameful indictment on our country's human rights record. It needs to end. The so-called Parents Next euphemism, which is designed apparently to help single mothers, overwhelmingly women, is just a tool to terrorise single mothers who are just trying to look after their children and to make ends meet. It is a disgrace. It is a shameful indictment that right now, up here, the Parliament has decided that if you're a single mother, we don't believe you. We will require you to sign a statutory declaration because you have a propensity to lie about whether or not you're single. We want a third party to prove. Therese Edwards, please come up with me from the National Council for Single Mothers and Their Children, and another extraordinary advocate. It is a disgrace. This is about gender-based discrimination against women across Australia. The social security system has become toxic, and it is making people sick. It is a tool that is bullying and harassing people and causing chronic anxiety and distress. Across the country this week, we've seen a groundswell of what the community wants. We've seen a groundswell from women and their allies across the country that have called for justice and for equality. And our fight continues today. Many women are left in the impossible situation of trying to live, to eke out an existence, lying to their children, pretending that they've eaten so that they know that their children can feel okay to eat themselves. Job Seeker is forcing women to stay in situations of sexual harassment and gender-based violence in the home. This is a deliberate decision. There are so many reports that the leaders of this parliament have heard to prove that that is the case, and they know it. What happened last year was, for the first time, people actually had just enough. Can I be clear? I've heard a few reasons about why we're about to see the slashing of the adequacy of Job Seeker, one of which is, oh, we can't afford it.
Bullshit.
Don't forget, any of you, that this parliament has legislated $300 billion in tax cuts, mostly going to wealthier men who already have jobs. Nobody asked, can we afford that? But I want to assure everybody that together, we are powerful. We are the majority. People want a decent safety net. I stand here committed with all of you to continue the fight. We are determined to deliver the kind of social security system that people are entitled to. Everybody needs a decent social security system which actually helps you and has your back, not costs lives and treats people, demonising and stigmatising. Shame on the federal government for what it's about to do in the parliament this week. We will fight. We will continue that fight. Thank you, everybody.
Therese Edwards from the National Council of Single Mothers and Their Children. Yesterday I marched. Yesterday I felt the hope and the anger and the truth that was being told. But today I'm just going to leave you with one horrible reality. At least 25% of women go back to their place of abuse and to the hands of their abuser because of our income system. You talk to anyone and they think that there is support, there is a payment. Folks, here I'm to tell you the truth, that if your child is 8, that is about 3 or 4 years in primary school, you're on Job Seeker. You are unemployed, and it doesn't matter what sort of horrendous circumstances you are on, because there is no such thing as an exemption. So I'm the hard, truth-telling reality check that this system is racist, it's sexist, and it's underpinned by misogynist policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Therese, and thank you to all our speakers. We are now going to take a moment's silence just to acknowledge that our welfare system traumatises people and it kills people. When we asked people to share their stories with us for the Income Support Bill inquiry, we were flooded. And the pattern of psychological, emotional and physical harm was so consistent that to include them all would have added nothing. We don't know how many people aren't here to tell their story. We request that you join us in silence to commemorate those who've been lost and to reflect upon the awful consequences of the absolutely unnecessary choices that the government is making and continuing to make. So just all hold a moment silent now. Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody, for that. I am now going to invite the journalists. If you want to chat to anyone, we'll just move off to the side here, if that's okay. If there may be people available and willing to do Vox Pops, and all of the speakers are available. We are going to have the protesters who are behind me. If you folks all want to move towards the chairs, we're going to create some talking circles and each chat about why we're here today and why this is important to us. So we've got some ushers who are going to help move you over here. As I said, journalists and speakers off to my left, your right. And yeah, thank you again very much for coming and for giving this the attention that it needs and deserves.
If you're wondering what the chairs are about, there's 1,400 chairs there representing, each chair represents 1,000 people. So they've set it all up there. We've got a good crowd of people here. Well done. I'm on the national page at the moment live, so
I've been crying.
So there's Rachel.
Yeah.
Again. We're still live, so I'm getting as much as I can. Hang on, I'll come up to you.
Okay. Hi folks, well we've just had some very passionate speeches about the total inadequacy of the so-called increase from Scott Morrison, who's chosen to condemn people to live in poverty on less than $44 a day. It's completely cruel. It's more of his continuing his campaign to demonise people, to stigmatise people who can't find work. I'm going to be moving amendments when the bill comes into the Senate tomorrow. I'm going to put amendments to increase the payment to $80 a day, back to how it was when the government doubled the payment with the coronavirus supplement. We've got a range of other amendments to try and improve this rotten social security system.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, where are we now? So we've got people everywhere. So Jane's gone off to rescue my case from the airport for me. Yeah, she's gone off to do that. My case arrives at 10 to 12 with all of my stuff in it. Typical, but anyway. So I'm not sure where I'm supposed to be, but I had a kind. You would have seen in the video here somewhere. There's a gentleman wearing one of our no card shirts. We've got a lady here wearing one of our badges too. He bought me a shirt down, thank God, because all my shirts are in the case. But that'll be arriving soon. So at least I had a shirt to put over and wear. So this is really good. Now, I just want to... Sorry. I'm trying not to run people over.
Are you live?
Yeah, I'm live on Facebook, so I'll just... That's all right.
Tell everyone all my secrets.
No, it's okay. Where do you want me? Yeah, I'll come in the photo, of course. Get my photo done. I'll just come in.
All the better.
Here's Jordan.
Jazz wants us to move in this way.
Do we need to bunch up? Now all of a sudden am I blocking anybody?
Move in a bit more.
Hey?
With the banner?
Where do you want?
We can move in a bit more. Sorry.
There's the media throng. And then others up there.
I was in charge of it before. Yeah, just on the corner.
So, yeah. I'll turn around.
I could have absolutely could have. No, I almost
rephrase that.
I broke down, honestly, because it was actually like
it was one of the most disgusting, cowardly things I've ever seen.
We were streaming it live to our page. I had card holders falling apart that
night. We were
night.
so hopeful because, like, from what we could see, it was planned. Like from the politicians, we could see that it could have been shut down just then and there, and then Centre Alliance.
Mm-hmm.
I know. It's almost like you can never trust the centrists.
I think I'll go off this live now and get somebody to trouble else. Alright guys, I'll come back later, alright? I'll try and preserve my phone battery for a while. Alright, thanks.